Good morning, hi, good morning viewer, welcome back to my channel, Hocantalk. Thank you very much for coming back to my video. Every day I'm putting in a lot of effort to do video to bring you all the wonderful information to help your financial career or whatever career and also your business decision. All my all my video will be presented in two languages, English and Chinese. So for those people who want to listen to Chinese, you can wait for the Chinese video to be uploaded. And again, likewise, I hope you can subscribe to my video so that you can support and help me to produce more wonderful video for everybody to share and to benefit a lot of people. So without further ado, the same method will be used. It will be marker and paper. And today, very interesting topic will be the oil prices. The changes in oil prices recently impact on the 5 countries in Asia. Why these 5 countries? Because I think I've read from newspaper, this 5 countries has been mentioned quite frequently. So I actually wanted to do this video to inform or to share with my viewer what would be the impact of the oil price, escalating oil prices on these 5 countries. So now today the topic, if we look at the first slide, will be oil price, impact on China, Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, and Philippines. Of course, we all know what Philippines is talking to China now, asking for help and whatsoever. Again, all this, we don't talk about politics, we only focus on business and finance. Okay, so today topic will be the oil price impact on China, Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, and Philippines. Now again, I won't zoom in into all these individual micro review of all these countries because that will make the video very long and everybody will fall asleep. So let's just do comparison. Okay, hopefully that will bring up a lot of insight for all of y'all to benefit all of y'all. Now, before we look at all the impact on all these 5 countries, we have to look at 2 kind of oil reserve. Now, the first one is called the proven reserve, meaning those reserve that is hidden under the ground. The other one is called the strategic reserve, meaning the oil that's stored in the oil storage, oil tank on shore or offshore. So to help a country to survive when there is no more oil import into that country. So that is called a strategic reserve. Now for simplicity or for a matter of interest, I will list down only in Asia. Not including South America, Latin America, North America. No, only in Asia, which are the top country that have proven oil reserve, meaning the oil under the ground. So if you look at this chart, rank number 1 is Saudi Arabia, and rank number 2, wow, this country is being mentioned about almost every day. Iran, which is being invaded by USA and Israel, and again, I think the whole world, the history of humanity, all the history that you have read before. Once you have oil or once you have something that other people want, then your country will be in a very difficult position. There will be a lot of demand, a lot of requests, a lot of dispute. So again, not surprising because Iran has the second largest proven oil reserve in Asia. So maybe that's the reason why in the past British they were there, France they were there, and a lot of issue being created. Now you see USA and you see all this war happening. So Iraq also has a lot of proven oil reserve in Asia. Iraq is ranked number 3, and we all know what happened to Iraq. Now Kuwait, UAE, Kazakhstan, and China and Vietnam. So these are the top Asia country that has proven oil reserve. This is just for matter of interest. Now, today we are more keen to talk about strategic reserve because now the blockage, the Strait of Hormuz being blocked, a lot of vessels cannot come out of that strait. A lot of oil cannot be exported out from Middle East. A lot of LNG cannot be exported out. So now we have to focus on what we call the strategic reserve, meaning the oil reserve kept by a country for safety purposes in case there is no more oil import to the country. So, and I explained to you what is a strategic reserve compared to a proven reserve. Now, what are the top Asia country that has the most highest level of strategic oil reserve. If you look at this slide, China, number one, they have 1.3 billion barrel. Japan 470 million barrel, and likewise you can look at the chart. South Korea, India, Taiwan, Thailand, all the way, and Singapore ranked last among the top Asia country. The next slide will be interesting because the next slide, all these numbers are from international available sources such as International Energy Association Department, or in Chinese called 国际能源组织. So it's International Energy Association, or so all these numbers are easily available, but it took a lot of effort to go and read through all these numbers, all these statistics, all this report to come out with all these slides. So I hope you all can appreciate and subscribe to my video. So now the next slide will tell you who are the top 5 Asia countries that consume the most oil on a per day basis. So if you look at China, every day they use up 17 million of barrel of oil, so it's very high. And Japan is 3 over million. Singapore, surprisingly, a small country like us, is 1.5 million. But of course, Singapore is different because we have a lot of refinery, like Jurong Island, all this. So we actually import a lot of oil for refining and then export. But still, having a big refinery also makes Singapore, to a certain extent, more sensitive to changes in oil supply. Because once the supplies cannot come out from Middle East, that means our oil refinery are operating below capacity. So these are all the things that a country must prepare themselves. Now, in Malaysia is close to 1 million, and Philippines is less than 500,000. In terms of ranking, you can see that China ranked number 2 after USA, and Japan is number 7. Singapore, as a small country, we are number 18. That shows that we have a very big refinery industry in Singapore. Now we come to something very interesting, because I noticed there's a lot of YouTube video, a lot of video to talk about energy crisis recently. Actually, to be honest, there are available ratio in the oil industry to let people judge or guide the vulnerability of a country when there's oil shortage. So there are already matrix or valuation ratio that's available. If you dig in wide enough, you will be able to cover them. Now again, I'm going to list out three formulas that is widely used. Now, if you look at the slide, oil safety matrix, meaning the formula used to measure how the dependency of a country on oil. So number 1 is called the oil dependency ratio. Number 2 is called the vulnerability ratio. Number 3 is called the days of survival. Actually, a lot of all this information are submitted by different countries to the International Energy Association. So they gather all this number and they actually publish all these things in their yearly publication or quarterly publication from them. So again, I just go through very quickly what are these matrix, what are these ratio. So for the oil dependency ratio is equal to the net import, meaning that the oil you import minus away the oil that you export. So there's a net import, and followed by your total consumption per year. Okay, this is on a yearly number and multiply by 100. Then you got the ratio. The higher the ratio, no good. The lower the ratio, better. That shows that your own country has enough oil. If you don't have enough oil, you got to import more, then the ratio will go up. Now the second ratio is called the vulnerability ratio. Vulnerability ratio. Now this is equal to the total annual consumption 1 year, how much oil you use, divided by the first ratio, which is called the oil dependency ratio. So the first ratio I just introduced. So this one, the higher the percentage, better, meaning you are more resilient, you are not so vulnerable. The low meaning no good. Okay, all this ratio, I will just go through it later on. I'll show you interesting table to compare all the 5 countries that we mentioned just now. Okay, don't fall asleep. We're coming up to the last ratio. Okay, so bear with me. The last ratio is called the days of survival. Now what is this day of survival? Is to use a strategic petroleum reserve. In short form, it's called SPR. divide by the daily oil consumption of a country, then you got the days of survival. All these numbers are published by country to the International Energy Association. So you can get all these things from the report, but do not worry. I have done all the job. That's why this video is here for you. Now, so for these days of survival, naturally, the higher the better. Okay, now forget about all the boring ratio. Now let's look at all the comparing results. So at least you know which country is worse off, which country is better off. Why now country got to beg the other country for help, or you know. So again, with all this information, you'll know why thing happen. Now look at this next slide. 5 Asia country, only Asia. I don't talk about Europe. I don't talk about Latin, North America, South America, or Africa. I only focus on Asia. Now, 5 Asia country oil consumption import ratio. Okay, now China. Now, these are the annual consumption. China use about close to 6 billion barrel of oil per year. So 72% they actually import. They import 72%. So the safety ratio, the vulnerability ratio, the vulnerability index, they are 8.21%. So the higher the better. Remember, I said the higher the better. So China is 8.21. Maybe you don't know what is 8.21. Is it considered high or considered low? But when you look at other country one, then you know whether 8.21 is high or low. Japan, they use about close to 1.2 billion barrel of oil per year, and they import 99%. So their vulnerability is 1.16. So compared to China 8.21, Japan is very vulnerable because they have no oil themselves. China still got a lot of oil. They have about 4 million barrel oil production per month. So China, they have their own oil reserve. So in terms of vulnerability, Japan is considered a very vulnerable country. Now Malaysia even worse. Malaysia is 0.36. Okay, Singapore is 0.55. So it's also horrible. And you look at Philippines is 0.17. So this ratio are called the vulnerability ratio. How vulnerable a country when come to oil shortages. So if you look at it, China is quite safe. They have their own oil. You know, so they and that's the reason why they don't import so much. And also because they have other mode of clean energy like the wind, the solar, and also they also use coal power. So mainly for China, oil is used in a transportation vehicle or transportation machinery, because even their passenger vehicle has been moving on to EV, electronic vehicle. So that's the reason why China vulnerability ratio is very high, meaning they are not weak. They don't need even when oil is not sufficient, they are okay. But compared to the rest of the country, Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia, these are below 1%, meaning they are very vulnerable. So I hope this slide gives you very interesting comparison. So at least when you make business decision or when you look at the macro environment, you know why China don't have to do this, why Philippines has to do this, why Singapore has to do this. Now, look at the days of survival submitted by all these countries to the relevant world organization. Now, Japan, they can survive 254 days. Now, this is different for the vulnerability index. Vulnerability index is how much oil you import. Now, this day of survival, I mentioned just now in the formula, is your strategic reserve divided by the daily consumption. So, Japan has second highest oil reserve, strategic oil reserve in Asia after China, but because their population, their usage is lower than China, so they can actually survive 254 days if there's no oil import. South Korea 208, and China now go to number 3, 120. Why? China, despite the fact that they have the highest strategic reserve in the world, but because China is huge, they consume a lot on a daily basis, so their survivability in terms of days is 120. Okay? Again, Philippines is 60s, Malaysia is 30, and Singapore is 40. So Philippines, Malaysia, and Singapore are vulnerable. The days of survival are smaller. Let's go to the next slide. If we compare the days of survival, and then we do some analysis, and we can tell what will happen if the supply of oil start to be affected by wars or by whatever factor. So if you look at the country, because of the high strategic reserve, China, Japan, South Korea, in terms of supply, they should be quite comfortable because they have their strategic reserve to supply to the local market. In terms of price will go up, but not as much. That's why I put one arrow. But for Singapore and Malaysia, supply, no issue because they have strategic reserve. Also, Singapore has a huge refinery industry, so they can always swap some of the oil in the refinery for local consumption. Because since you are the one that refine it, before you sell to someone else, if your domestic demand, there's some, you will maybe just use that one to support the local demand. Now, Malaysia have their own oil reserve. So Malaysia is a very fortunate country. They have their own oil reserve, so they are able to supply some oil to themselves. So supply is not an issue for these two countries, but price increase will be much higher than China, Japan, and South Korea, because basically they are more vulnerable. So in order to ensure their continuous supply, they have to pay higher price. Now, the worst country among these five will be Philippines. Philippines has a very low strategic reserve, so the supply will be very questionable. And also they have no oil reserve. Singapore has an oil refinery industry to support. Malaysia have their own oil reserve. Philippines, nothing. So the supply in Philippines, I put a cross here, is questionable. After the day of survival period is over, they have no oil. That's the reason why the price escalation in Philippines, I put on there 3 arrows. They have the potential to go up the highest compared to these 5 countries. Now, let's make this whole video more interesting by putting a stress test. Now, what is a stress test? Meaning that among all these 5 countries, if the consumption of the oil go up by 10%, what will happen to the country? Can they survive? What do they need to do? So the stress test formula is the same formula as I actually put out there, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which is called a SPR. You divide by the daily oil consumption, multiply by the change in consumption. So how much stress can the country take? So for example, if the consumption go up by 10%, can the country go up by 20%, can the country still survive? So these are the things that we want to take a look. Now we come to the stress test comparison. I put an assumption of 10%. What happens if the consumption go up by 10%? Now, Japan, day of survival will drop by 23 days, so about 9.1%. China, almost the same, 9.2% drop. That means if all the Chinese people use oil 10% more than they do compared to yesterday, then the day of survival will drop 9.2%. Philippines is among the highest, drop by 10%. Singapore also among the highest, drop by 10%. And Malaysia, surprisingly, is among the lowest of the 5 countries, only 8.8%. So you see, different country, the stress test will result in different percentage reduction in the days of survival. Now, because the daily consumption is different, so these 5 countries will have to come out different amount of money to buy back the number of days that are gone. Okay, for example, if the consumption go up by 10%, the days of survival drop. Then if this country wanted to replenish the day of survival back to the normal level, they have to spend money to buy oil. Now, assuming they're going to spend money to buy oil, and we assume that the oil price is $100 US per barrel. So let's look at how much money each of these 5 countries need to fork out in order to recover the loss in days of survival. So you see, Japan got to spend 7.13 billion just to make sure that if there's a 10% increase in consumption, in order to gain back the same days of survival, they got to spend 7.13 billion per day. And China is 17.86 billion. That's a huge amount. And Singapore per day is 600 million. So that's not for the whole 10%, in order to recover, not per day, in order to recover the number of days lost after the 10% increase, Japan need to spend 7.13 billion, China is 17.86 billion, and Singapore is 600 million, and Philippines is 280 million, and Malaysia is 290 million. So you can see that Philippines also need to spend a lot of money, and 600 million to Singapore. Immediately you will see all the utility price go up, which is happening now in Singapore. So that's the reason to explain why Singapore is quite sensitive to this kind of thing. Okay. Now, for this one, I come to the last slide. Of course, to talk about oil energy crisis, all this, you will take days to explain. But again, I just want to let you know a brief comparison among these 5 countries so that you have a very good insight about what happened when the price fluctuate, the oil supply fluctuate, oil price fluctuate. What would happen to these 5 countries? Are they strong enough to withstand? Are they weak enough that they had to start to beg other countries for help? So from all my slides, you are able to have your own opinion. Okay, thank you very much. This is the end of the video today. I hope you like my video, offer you insights and information for you to make your own business decision and also to enrich your personal knowledge. Do subscribe and do forward my video to all your friends so that they can also subscribe and watch my video. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye bye.